Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar where we will tackle the question of how we can connect and showcase data from SAP and other various sources within Power BI. Obviously, everything powered by Microsoft Fabric. My name is Alyosha. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at B2BI. I'll be your host for today and also the speaker for the first part of the webinar, which will be focused heavily on the business side of implementation. And joining me today is Christian. Christian, hello, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Hello, everyone.
Uh, Christian is a data engineer at B2BI with a sole focus of working within Microsoft Fabric. So he will take over for the second part of our webinar, which will be more technical, and you will be able to hear it and see how it is to live and work within that environment. Now, we have plenty of stuff to go through, not a lot of time, so let's dig right in. A short recap of what awaits us. We'll start off with a brief introduction of who we are because it is important for certain topics that we will unveil during this meeting. We will then jump into the demo pertaining particularly to the Power BI side of the implementation to showcase what a proper business intelligence solution should look like. This will be my part, and then, as said before, Christian will take over with the architectures, the explanation and showcasing of how things are done within Microsoft Fabric. If there are any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A, not the chat, the Q&A button module within Zoom, and we will get to your questions at the end. Okay, so a brief introduction of us at B2BI. We basically implement advanced business intelligence and AI solutions for our clients. We are a team of 33 people with various backgrounds ranging from mathematicians, economists, doctors of astrophysics, you name it. And just as we are various, but we do share obviously the love of data and analytics, but just as our backgrounds vary, our clientele varies as well based on the field that they work with, at. We work with sales, meaning retail companies. We work with manufacturing companies, financial institutions, namely banks, insurance companies, and so on, ministries. The umbrella of the BI implementation projects that we've done so far and will continue to do so is quite large. Now, regardless of who we work with or what the nature of the project that we are implementing, our process stays the same and our mission stays the same. That is, and it has been for the past 10 years while we were at this, has been to changing the mindset of the organization that we work with, changing it to a more data-driven culture. In this day and age, it is very simple to say that you are data-driven. Fine. I have my data. I make decisions based on this data. Therefore, I am data-driven. Not that much, unfortunately. The two main questions are, do you have the right data and the right amount of that data? And do you know how to read it? Becoming a data or a data-driven organization is a three-step process. At the beginning, it's an engineering problem. You need a tool that can gather the data from various sources, that can aggregate these sources, make sure that the data and within the analytics tool is up to date, and that the user experience is simple, easy to understand. So this is the engineering problem. Now, why various data sources? I've mentioned it twice so far, is simply because rarely does one system hold enough data to give you the whole truth about your company's standing. Usually, the truth is hidden within various systems that need to be aggregated and analyzed as a whole. Now, this is, again, the engineering problem. Now, once you get that done, you still need to know how to use those solutions. We go on to the data interpretation. This is a coaching issue. You have the reports. Do you know how to use them? Do you know how to spin a tale, a story? That is why the proper concept is data storytelling. Do you know how to spin a story that will make it clear how your company is standing? And once you have the tool, once you know how to use it, then you go on to the decision-making process. You can rate your decisions, you can archive them, and you can say, okay, so that decision was okay, that decision was not that okay, and adjust how you work. And the byproduct of all of this is that we democratize the data. That basically means the right data to the right people securely. Now, concerning the data and analytics part, the tool that we use and will continue to use is Microsoft's platform, basically Power BI and Microsoft Fabric. Ever since they came out, they have been deemed the leader by Gartner for the analytics and business intelligence platforms and will probably continue to dominate on that field as well. Okay, now to the crux of the problem. When we're talking about SAP data, that usually means we are working with larger companies, right? And by nature, larger companies have more processes. SAP covers the majority of the processes when it comes to data, but not all of them. For instance, this manual pipeline consists of, okay, so you have data within SAP, but then you might also be planning and forecasting in Excel. You might have a CRM module with your client data, your sales funnels, and so on in Dynamics, for instance. You might need certain weather data, that some obscure type of information that is hidden between APIs. It's some web address. Now, what do you do with that? Either you are in IT or you ask through the IT module, fine, I need a query, an ad hoc query that will kind of aggregate this data and harmonize it, or you go and tackle this problem by yourself. You get as much data as you can. Usually you paste everything in Excel, then try to find the proper VLOOKUP functions and say, okay, so this is my whole truth and nothing but the truth, right? And run pivot tables on that. This process is robust. It works. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it is time sensitive and it is tedious to uphold, especially with the refresh rates and so on. So it's good for ad hoc. It's not good for corporate BI. Now, before we go into the demo, just how we will tackle this. Some people like to read the book in a way that they start at the last chapter and understand how the book ends, and then enjoy the first 90% of the book, understanding how that came to pass. And this will work wonders for us. We will jump now into the demo for the last part, the Power BI, see how the proper infrastructure should look like, and then Christian will take over and walk us through the process. Okay? So what I am currently sharing, let's put this into full screen, is a dashboard within Power BI. I'm gathering different sources. I'm gathering sources from SAP, from Dynamics, from web apps, and so on. And I'm showing the truth on a higher level on a dashboard. So I'm covering my sales departments, my finance departments, payables and receivables, cash flows, overall equipment effectiveness. Let's say this is a manufacturing company. I get the truth on this dashboard for today because it's refreshed daily. And on a high level note, I can see, okay, so far my sales department, for instance, has sold almost 30 million euros worth of goods. Last year, so previous year, year to date, same period last year, it was 27.5. We are up 8.4%. The colors are telling me the story. But if I want to understand the story behind these tiles, every tile has a report that tells us how this number came to be. I can click on this tile and I'll drill down on the report layer. And now I'm in the Power BI reports. So dashboard, reports. The dashboards reports are created in a sense that on the top left-hand side, we'll always have the main KPIs, and the rest will tell us why this number is as it is. For instance, the darker shaded columns and bars represent our current year. The lighter ones represent our previous year. And I can see all the ups and downs, color-coded, obviously, with red and green. I can slice this data by months, by countries, by my key account managers, my ABC classifications, if I have them, and my item group, which is the sole reason of what I want to understand. And the report is supposed to guide me. I can say, okay, I'm better than I was last year, but January still had a fall. I want to see why that is. I can click on January, and within Power BI, every single visualization is a filter. So it's guiding me. This is the data story concept of it. Okay. So I clicked on January, and everything adjusted itself to the January of today versus last year. And I can say, okay, fine. So I saw a lot of city bikes, almost 900K, which is 408K up from last year. But I'm interested in the missing, in the issues, right? So I will sort my deltas and not my actuals. I'll sort my deltas twice so that I get to the one item group that contributed the most to the fall. And within that item group, I can drill all the way down to the items and say, okay, so bike, mountain, women's, this particular item did not sold as well. With control click, I can add this into my filter context and see, okay, so what did I just learn? And this is based on millions and millions of rows of data. I can learn that I didn't meet the expectation sales within Slovenia. I didn't sell anything in Croatia, but last year I did. And I opened up new market in Austria, which wasn't available last year. So however, the drop is still significant. And I'm wondering, fine, so what was happening in Slovenia? I can click on Slovenia and I can see, okay, so Matthew still upstaged himself in sales. So did Matt. Andrew and Maya are not the issue. However, Tanya and Jane have been, those key accounts hold even more info that I can use in understanding this particular situation. Now, this is the data from both the dynamics side, so the sales funnel, the clients, and the SAP side, for instance, but we also mentioned something about Excel. Usually we have plans in Excel that we want to analyze based or against our actuals. Now, we firmly believe that planning and analytics should exist in the same environment, and people or users should get immediate prompt back of whether what they planned makes sense or not. So I'm going to jump into the planning module of my reports, and here I'm trying to understand. Okay, so the blue columns now are my plans, and the lighter shaded ones are my actuals. Since I'm now in the middle of the June, I will be forecasting for the next half a year of what my sales numbers might look like. For instance, I'm going to focus on next month. Let's say in July, I just learned that I will not be selling 1 million euros worth of mountain bikes, but 1.2. Now, this particular visual, this is our creation. It's a write-back tool within Power BI that basically makes Excel, or at least the planning part of it, obsolete. I can write in, instead of 1.0 million, I can write in 1.2 million. Type enter, and without even drilling down, I can see that the numbers for the mountain bikes, for all the countries, have been adjusted to reflect my change. I haven't manually written in any other formula. I achieved that just by changing the number on the upper level. And let's say for the same month, for the city bike, I can say, fine, within city bikes, for the bike for the women's part, I know that Austria and Slovenia will have about a 50% increase in their sales. And you can see now that it is adjusting the prognosis of my sales immediately and live for me within this matrix. And as soon as I save that, you will be able to see the jump in the July forecasts as well. So there we go. There's a jump. Now, obviously, this tool has certain options as well that we are not showcasing. That is, somebody needs to say, okay, this plan is as good as it is. We can push forward with it. The commenting part, the different ways of inputting the numbers, but we are here to present the option of exchanging the data live with against your SAP data with our own planning tool. Now, we started off with the data sources and the manual processing and the analytics in Excel. Now, Excel we exchange with Power BI. Data sources will stay the same, but the manual processing part of this, what Christian will guide us through, falls now under Fabric. It's not manual, it's done within the Fabric ecosystem. Now, how to explain what Microsoft Fabric is? It's easiest to explain it based on what Microsoft Office is. Microsoft Office is not a tool. It's a family of tools. Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, Excel, and so on, who communicate with each other, can integrate each other's part within themselves, and make everything seem seamless. Fabric is just the same. It's a combination of tools that communicate with one another and serve the sole purpose of the data ingestion and data storage within the BI aspect of how things should look like. And when you are implementing, and this is what the main point for Christian's part will be as well, is to understand that as soon as possible, you want to dislocate the business intelligence solution from your data sources as to not to overwhelm them. That is why with the proper processes, you take the data that you need from the data sources and you store it in something that's called the bronze layer. We are now talking about the medallion architecture. You basically copy, paste, extract, and load the data that you need within the bronze layer, and then you curate it, you form it into proper table format within the silver layer. Again, this process is disconnected from the ERPs and doesn't overwhelm them. And then afterwards, you get a gold layer, which is BI data ready layer that you can connect with the semantic models on it. Now, this is a broader overview. Christian, you will guide us through the specifics of this implementation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alyosha. Again, the presentation I think was very much useful, especially for the end users, because that's whom we are designing the solutions for, right? We want them to have a nice interface, something that is easy to learn, yet very powerful. I will take the screen share now, and we're going more towards the engineering part of actually how to enable that. So just give me a second. Please let me know if you can see well. Okay. Also, in case, Alyosha, you see that I'm going over time, please do remind me.
I will.
So I would like to start off with what are actually the common challenges of implementing BI solutions, right? Regardless of the source systems we have. Usually it comes down to a combination of factors, and we're going to be talking through a lot of them. And there's also going to be a lot of information provided here. So in case you have any questions, really do feel free to send them into the chat. We're going to have a Q&A session in the end. So if you find yourself contemplating how this relates to my solution, really do send a message. So the implementation of solutions usually comes to first, we're dealing with expensive licensing. For example, if we're using SQL Server and we're on a standard edition, we only have so much RAM and so much CPU power, or the number of CPU sockets and cores that we can utilize. But what if we what if we have a big load, let's say a nightly load, and we need a lot of resources more than we currently have? Well, the only way to do so is, well, actually to go to a higher tier, to go to an enterprise edition, which is not linearly more expensive, but exponentially, right? So just for that, let's say 2 hours per day when we need a lot of resources, we have to go to a higher licensing tier. And that is something we kind of want to avoid. So really, the integration of scalability and licensing can be a big issues for a lot of teams, right? Especially if you're using SAP, probably, well, you have a lot of data. Well, okay, you have your data sources, you have your data residing in your data systems, but how do you actually then integrate them? Okay, we don't have one system anymore. Usually we have multiple. Let's say we have Salesforce or we have Dynamics, and then we have some marketing platforms and we have some warehouse management systems, and there can be a lot of them. Well, if we're only dealing with tabular data, then usually it's not that big of an issue. We find ourselves a nice integration tool and we, well, connect to all the tabular data and we write it to a relational database. But what about if we have, let's say, data coming in through REST APIs or some other SOAP protocols or something? Well, then we have to have the ability to also store not only structured, but also unstructured or semi-structured data. What this then creates is, well, we actually have two different platforms, right? We have to have a database, a relational database where we're storing the data, and then we have another system just for storing unstructured data. So usually that would be a file system, and again, we have more maintenance in that regard. Well, that is not the only issue we have when we have multiple kinds of systems. Again, usually we would have to have more tools available, right? So tools that integrate, let's say, different ERP systems, but then we would have some, I don't know, Python, C# or other scripts that we have to run. Again, we're adding complexity layer by layer. And one of the big challenges we're faced then with is how do we actually have full DevOps coverage, right? If we're implementing robust solutions, we also want to have everything archived in Git. We want to have automatic deploys. We want to have automatic builds, all of that. All right. And also then to maintain full development test production environments. Well, that becomes a real issue, right? Because we have to have separate processes for our ETLs, separate processes for maintaining the code of databases, right? If we have SQL Server, we would be using, I don't know, SQL projects. But what if we're using Postgre or Oracle or other systems as well, right? Again, we also have analytics. Well, how do we then have Git-enabled analytics? Meaning semantic models and the BI reports. And again, having all of those components at the same time, well, usually that leads to long and costly development cycles. Also, we have to have individuals who are skilled enough to maintain all of that to develop, and that usually becomes a real issue. And the last but not least, data silos, right? We have data residing in different databases on different systems. Well, how do we actually grant the proper rights for all of the users, right? So that is hard to maintain without users having some specialized equipment or software and specialized knowledge. And that are the issues that we're faced with. And those are the issues we had previously, and we kind of wanted to resolve all of that. And that is actually the reason why then we're choosing the platform of Microsoft Fabric, right? Because we're trying to solve all of that. So before we delve deep into Microsoft Fabric, I would like to focus on SAP first, right? How do we extract data out of it? We know SAP is a great system, but it's not the most easily reachable, right? It's hard to get data out of it. And the question is, well, can we do it within our own infrastructure on premise? Or do we have to have Fabric? Well, the answer is sure, we can do it on premise. And Alyosha mentioned that I'm solely focused on the cloud platforms, but it's not entirely true. I spent most of my time actually previously working in on-premise architectures. But what is common to most of them is usually the difficulty of actually maintaining the entire solution, right? We would usually start with having our own data residing in SAP. And this is what this diagram shows, right? How do we actually get data from SAP to analytics? So I'm gonna draw on the screen a little bit so that we know how to follow. And usually this is the layer where we would connect to SAP. We wouldn't connect directly to the database, but we would connect to the application layer. And to do so, we would use different kinds of protocols, right? We would be using RFC remote function calls or OData or some other way. But usually to do that, we would have to have external tools. Okay, so what we would do is we would take Theobald, Extract Universal, IS, CData, SAP, or any other solution. But to do that, well, we would usually have to have a gateway server, right? Something that can communicate with the actual application layer. So to do that, again, we would have to have separate licensing, separate processes to cover the DevOps side of things, and individuals who are skilled to maintain those solutions. Okay, the question then is, well, where do they actually develop? Usually we would have developer workstations. So again, we're not only dealing with one virtual machine where the gateway or ETL server lives, but we would also have to have another station where we have all the specialized software for the development of those solutions. And to get the data out of them, well, sure, we use the extraction tools, but where do we write them? Again, we would usually then have a database that is usually on yet another machine, on another virtual machine. And again, we can set up the databases there, we can set up the file storage there, and all of that. But the issue is, again, it is quite difficult then to govern all of that. We have to have, let's say, at least 3 virtual machines. We have to take care of their operating systems. We have to take care of the disks, the backups, all of that. So we usually don't really like it. And then we ask ourselves, well, how can we do things better? How can we streamline those processes? And the answer to that question is, well, we choose Fabric. And first, as before, we still have our SAP, right? We still have the ERP, I mean, the database behind it. We still have the application layer in front of it. And we're still using the same protocols, right? We're still connecting via RFC, OData, or other systems. But if you look at the right, now we only have one nice big square, and that's Microsoft Fabric, right? And all of the previously mentioned things actually live here. So all of the ETLs, all of the pipelines, all of the databases, all of that actually lives within Microsoft Fabric. The question is then, how do we connect from Microsoft Fabric to our SAP? Well, we have to have an on-premise data gateway that we position within the, let's say, or in the same network or in the network that can communicate with the network of our SAP system, right? Because we don't want to open up all the ports and all that to the entire internet. Usually we would then just have a single point where we can communicate between the cloud environment and the on-premise environment. So we would use the on-premise data gateway. What we would do there is we only have to install the SAP.NET drivers, and that's it, right? Once we have that established, we can communicate from Fabric to SAP, and we can use the same protocols that we had before. What that means is we have fewer tools. We only have the cloud platform and one virtual machine, and that's it. And that is really the beauty of it all. We can then, as Alyosha mentioned, in the in the medallion architecture, we can land the data in the data lake. So if we have the SAP data, we can land it in tabular format. If we have data coming in from APIs, well, we can write them in JSON or in XML or any other file format. And we can also connect local file systems, other databases. The thing is, we can communicate between all of them. And once we are within Microsoft Fabric, well, we then follow the medallion architecture. We normalize the data, prepare it for. We normalize JSONs and other file formats, and then we denormalize it in the warehouse portion of things. So that is usually where we implement then really the star schema and tables in the format prepared for analytics. So that is then the architecture of Microsoft Fabric. And really, the solution is a lot more streamlined, and all of it is consolidated within a single platform, right? So let me just go further. How do we actually do that? Well, Microsoft Fabric offers us two primary ways of getting data out of SAP. The first one is to connect via RFC, as we did here. And to do that, we would be using the table application server. But if you're looking carefully, you also notice that we have the SAP HANA database here, which a lot of systems use. The question then is, okay, I have the HANA database, I have Microsoft Fabric, can I simply query the data then? The answer from a technical standpoint is yes. The answer from a licensing point of view is it depends. So if you have a SAP runtime license, you cannot extract the data that way, right? But you can still use the application server. So if you have a HANA database, the only difference is you're not querying the database directly. Well, then the other major way of getting data out of SAP is to actually use a solution called mirroring. And that is a way where we're actually replicating the data near real time. And we will talk about that a little bit more in the upcoming slides. But first, let's really look at how we're doing the extractions from Microsoft Fabric. So these are a couple of screenshots taken from real projects that we implemented in production for our clients. And what you will see on the left here is actually the request that we're sending to the SAP system itself, right? To the application server, sorry. If you look at it, you will see you have a type, SAP table source, and then we have the table name that we're connecting to. We have VBRK, so let's say the billing headers. And of course, we don't want to overload the system and extract all 200 columns that we have in the table. We would simply choose the few that we require the most, right? So we would take a couple of them, and that's it. And what we achieve by that is then we're reducing the load on the source system, and also we're then making the times to extract the data a lot shorter. What we would usually also do is, not shown here in this screenshot, is we would do this load incrementally, right? So we would be looking at the last inserts, last updates, and we would be removing the deleted rows. And if we look at the screenshot on the right, you will see this is an image of after the data was processed in the Fabric system. We would see the SAP table. Its data read would be 120 megabytes, which means 380,000 rows. So this would be, let's say, 1 month of data for the given company. And if you look carefully, you will see the data written is only 7 megabytes. The question then becomes, why? Where did the remainder of those 120 megabytes get lost? Well, Microsoft Fabric uses a lot of compression. The most used format is the delta parquet file format, which is a columnar format and is a lot better at compression than the row-based systems. And what we notice is we see also the times that are required to first connect to the source system, get the data out of it, transform the format, and write the data are usually quite short. So this took about a minute, but this is only for one table. Usually we would not be extracting only one table, we would be extracting a lot more. And that's what we're usually also doing. Let me just go to the next slide. Here we're pulling in data from SAP HANA system via the application server, and we're pulling in data for sales analytics, billing, stock movements, purchase orders, things like that. And here in the screenshot, you will see about 20, 25 tables. And we're doing the loads incrementally, and we're doing them, I think, four at the same time, right, in parallel. So we again don't want to overload the source system. And we notice that the entire duration for that process is only 4 minutes, right? So all of them 20, 25 tables. With the additional condition of max 4 tables per transaction, we see that we're able then to still achieve quite low latency. So that is the way we're pulling the data out of SAP. And how do we know it works? Well, because we're doing it on a regular basis, right? Alyosha mentioned 1 time per day, but we can scale that up quite a lot. Well, that's about it for the pulling the data out of SAP from Microsoft Fabric. Now we're going the other way, right? Now we're doing the SAP mirroring. So what does it mean? How do we enable it? First of all, we have to have the SAP DataSphere replication flow. That is a requirement. And using that, we can connect to the majority of SAP systems, right? So the ECC, HANA, or any other major SAP system. And to do that, we have to have the connections to two systems, right? So first is the source system, and the second is the Microsoft Cloud system, right? And we only have to establish 2 connections. The configuration is quite simple, and I will show it in the following slides. But the only note I would like to give here is the DataSphere premium outbound pricing applies here. So Microsoft is not charging you anything to get the data out of SAP. The charging comes on the SAP side. The biggest benefit you get is, well, near real-time replication. Also, we don't have to construct complex ETLs as we were looking at before. Again, as I mentioned, we're then separately pulling in the inserts, the updates, the deletes, and then merging all of that within Fabric, but we have that configured automatically, right? So the mirroring is a newer solution, and it also appears to be the way of the future, but SAP DataSphere Premium outbound licensing does apply. Okay, so the way to do it is, as mentioned, we have to set up 2 connections, the Azure connection and the S/4HANA connection. We have to configure what we want to extract and mirror. We select the objects, and then we only have to specify the destination file format and say, okay, we want initial and delta, and that's pretty much it, right? Once we do that, we're able to connect Microsoft data to SAP near real time. And we're then also able to monitor all of that solution.
Christian.
Yes.
I had an idea, and for the attendees joining in, this was not scheduled, so I'm completely ruining Christian's flow right now. We've discussed the current, right? Before we went to the demo, we discussed the possible current manual processing Christian has now gone through the automated kind of processing, and we'll continue to showcase it within that part as well. So it might be a good time to check out how you, our listeners, are tackling such problems. So I'm gonna start a poll. There you go. To see whether there's a lot of manual work that you are still doing. Do you have connections already set up? Do you mainly use the business warehouse and so on? Okay, the votes are coming in. I'm only going to take 10 more seconds of your time, Christian.
Yep. No,
By
I
the
mean,
way,
it's a nice way to.
when you asked me, you are good on time. So there you go.
Yeah, I just checked my phone as well. So yeah, but I mean, this is an interesting question because I mean, sure, there are a lot of ways of getting data out of SAP, and the amount of automation really can vary a lot.
Yeah, okay. I think we got a majority of answers. Thank you very much. Let's end this and share the results. Yeah. So again, a quick comment. Usually, the expected result is that the majority is focused on the manual exports, such as the case that we defined at the beginning. It's great that you use SAP's built-in systems, where the majority of data and the only data that you need is in SAP. That's still the best solution. The problem, as stated before, resides when Christian connecting to various sources and setting up the mainframe. Would you care to comment on this, Christian? The results?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is actually quite expected. We see similar results when talking to actual clients. Usually the first issue is the manual exports, and that is a big issue, right? Again, we're then faced with quite bound ways of actually extracting the data, the number of rows limitations, things like that.
Yeah.
So usually it really is a big pain point, right? How do we actually do it? How do we set it up automatically? All of that.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for your input, and thanks everyone for the votes. And apologies again, Christian. Take it away.
Thank you. Sorry, this one. So Microsoft Fabric, how does the solution actually look from this point of view? So if you're using Power BI, then this portal will be familiar to you as well. But for those of you who are seeing it for the first time, usually on the left-hand side, we would have a navigation bar and we would have workspaces. Workspaces, you can imagine, are like different servers, if you're more used to it from the on-premise world. So we have our workspaces, and within that, we have multiple parts of the solution. So as we said, a full data solution requires multiple components. So usually that would entail the ETL pipelines, meaning both the actual ETL itself and the orchestration of that. We would then have the data store. Here we actually save the databases, the lake houses, all that. Again, you don't have to remember all of those terms such as lake house. Just know that we're storing the data here in Microsoft Fabric. And then we would also have a nice folder for the BI part of solution. And one of the things I would like to point out is that previously, if you were using Power BI, you had to have been on Windows. That is no longer required. If you see, I'm on a Mac and I am able to fully implement the Fabric solution. I can access my semantic models. I can edit all of my ETLs, all of that. So just as a side note. So I would first maybe go to the pipelines. Oh, sorry, I just closed this. To the pipelines, just so that you have a nice overview of it. If you're used to using tools like SQL Server integration services, ADF, Informatica, Matillion, anything of that nature, this will be very familiar. And what I'm showing here is actual process of getting data out of source systems, transforming them, and then loading the data to the warehouse. So on the left-hand side, here you will first see we have the bronze portion of it. So this is the bronze, and we're pulling in data from, let's say, as Alyosha mentioned, weather stations. We have data pulled in from statistics office. We have data pulled in from some Oracle databases, so on and so forth. When all of that is done, the next step is then to have the silver layer, and then in the end, we have the gold layer. It's a bunch of scripts, to be fair. And its actual maintenance of that, again, is quite simple. So I'm just going to show you how to actually then develop the code itself, right? Because we said if we're dealing on-premise, we have to have specialized software. Well, if we want to develop in Fabric, again, as you see, the ETL, we don't have to have any separate software. We want to develop scripts. Well, again, we don't have to have any specialized software. Sorry, let me just close the drawing board. So we can simply click on the code and we're then taken to it. So here I'm writing Python code. You can also write SQL, you can write Scala, you can write R, whichever you prefer. So really it comes down to the team's preferences. There is no better way. Let's say if you have a team that's comfortable in Python, use Python. If you have a team that's comfortable using SQL, use SQL. So really it's up to you. But the main point is all of that is available within the platform, right? Then I'm just going to go back a little bit to the ETL, and I'm just going to show you then the warehouse point of it. And the thing is, again, we mentioned we have unstructured data, we have structured data. And to load it from one to another, well, it's actually quite simple. We can save the data first in a bronze layer, and I'm going to show you how that looks. And then I'm going to show you in the warehouse how that looks as well. So if I navigate to, let's say, my data store, you will see I have multiple databases, lake houses. So these are essentially just different parts of a data lake. And the user interface is quite similar to, let's say, SQL Server Management Studio or other tools. I don't know, VS Code or something like that. And we are able then to view the files, we're able to edit the files, all of that. So no additional platform, no special tooling, all of that, again, available in the single platform. If you paid special attention, you might have also noticed this part, source control. The source control portion is the integration of Microsoft Fabric with Azure DevOps, GitHub, or other tools. And we're then able to simply see the code that we have, because essentially all of the artifacts that we're showing here are, well, configuration and code in the backend. So, okay, we talked about the data store, we talked about data transformation, we have the BI layer in the end, and again, all of it lives within our browser. We can access it, we can edit it, we can interact with it, whatever we like. So that is Microsoft Fabric in a couple of minutes. I would like to sum up simply with why choose the platform. And as mentioned before, it's a scalable platform, has support for multiple programming languages. Really, it gives us the ability to scale it up and down as we please. So we don't have any separate licensing in that regard. I would say the main one of the main selling points of it is the ability to replace a multi-product stack, right? So again, object storage, orchestration, transformation, all of that, one platform, that's it. And I would maybe point out the last section here. Microsoft Fabric then really enables us to be ready for the upcoming era of AI. We have all of the data in a single platform. We can prepare ontologies. We can prepare our own custom agents. We can integrate them in Microsoft Teams, and the users are then able to talk with their data directly, but not only data from one source system, but the data that's already gone through the process of cleaning the data, validating the data, and having that quick response time because, well, we're connecting to the in-memory database of Power BI. So those are a couple of points I would like to point out about Microsoft Fabric, and now I'm giving the word back to you, Alyosha.
Thank you very much, Christian, and thank you for the very in-depth apologies. There we go. For the very in-depth guide through what it looks like to work within Fabric, its pros, what it replaces, and how it replaces it. Hopefully, everyone got the feel for the technology and for the environment. By the way, Christian, there's a question waiting for you in Q&A. It's very specific, and thank you for the question. I'll give you a minute or two to prepare the answer. Okay, so every proper webinar deserves a call to action to end it off with. So there's a checkbox. Think on it. How much time do you spend preparing and getting the data versus how much time you actually spend analyzing it? Usually, it is not in sync as one would expect. How many source system feed into that analysis, and are you getting conflicting numbers when you're hashing it out with your colleagues? If a new business user needs a new report based on the SAP data, what's the delivery time of either set report or the prepared query for the export? And how fresh is the data in this cross-system analysis? How much time do you need to keep the system up and running with the fresh data, especially for the time-sensitive data? And as Christian nicely wrapped it up on his part, the AI-ready platform, where in your workflow would AI be most beneficial? Where is it the low-hanging fruit? Quick to produce and not as costly. Obviously, if there are any senses tingling that there are issues that need to be addressed and how to address them, I welcome you to answer the next and last poll question regarding obviously the consultations. So we've talked a lot about the engineering part. Of course, the us being coaches means we also dive into the consultancy sphere as well. Now, while you are, and thank you again, answering these questions, just a quick shout out. Christian will be a speaker on the Data Saturday in 3 days in Zagreb in 3 days' time, where he will dive deep into the how to ingest data from a SQL Server, Oracle database, REST APIs, showcase it again with actually working on the solution live on stage. Okay, thank you, by the way, for your responses. For the poll, it seems like we have our summer cut out for us. Also, feel free to follow us online. The repository for all the webinars, workshops, BI academies, and so on are available on our website. Christian, there's a couple of questions waiting for us. We still have time. Should we
Yes,
tackle them?
Yes, I see that actually the questions are quite in a similar manner. So let's say we have SAC or DataSphere, and we want to get that data to Microsoft Fabric, and why should we be doing that in the first place? So again, as with most solutions, it depends again on your licensing. If you can expose the ODBC in DataSphere, then sure, we can connect to it. That shouldn't be an issue. But if we're doing the integration the other way around, so we're using the DataSphere to push the data towards the Microsoft Cloud, then you will have the outbound licensing. Um, I'm not sure on the exact number that SAP will charge you, but the last known general rule of thumb was for the CUs, where you had the pricing, I think was 500 euros per 20 gigabytes per month. So then again, based on the way you structure those extractions, if you're then pushing in out a lot of data that is not really necessary to be pushed, and you can um, rebuild it in Microsoft Fabric, then of course you can bring down those costs. So again, it depends. But why should you be doing that in the first place? Well, usually it comes down to customer preferences. I mean, Power BI as a tool itself has a lot of BI requirements that we're usually faced with, right? We want to have row level security, we want to have object level security, we want to have deep integration with DevOps, we want to have the accessibility of it all in Microsoft Teams, in PowerPoint, in other tools. So usually, I mean, at least from our end, it was because the end users want to access that data, right? Because again, if we have all of that data within Microsoft Fabric, within Power BI, it's very easy to connect to it, to do with it as you please, build up additional apps. I mean, it wasn't part of the demo, but within Microsoft Fabric, you can build actual web apps. Right, you would have the automatic provisioning of database and backend, and the sky is then the limit. So it's really the question then becomes, do we want to open up the data that we have and build on upon it? So I hope that answers the questions.
They do seem similar in nature. I think you covered all of them. And it seems those are all that will be coming in. We would very much like to thank you for your time. Hopefully you got a good glimpse of what the capabilities and possibilities of such implementations are. Feel free to keep in touch, and it was a pleasure to be in your company. Christian, thank you as well. It was amazing.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Take care. Goodbye.